I'm 70 years old, and for most of my life, I believed one simple thing kept a person safe: family. I believed if you raised your child right, loved them hard, sacrificed quietly, and never asked for more than you gave, you'd earn a kind of protection money couldn't buy. Not guarantees, but loyalty. Not perfection, but decency. That belief died on a Tuesday afternoon, right outside my own front door. I had just gotten back from staying 3 nights with Mrs. Connie, an old woman with dementia, who sometimes thought I was her sister, and sometimes thought I was a nurse sent to steal her husband. I didn't mind. The job paid, and the nights were quiet most of the time. Plus, helping people made me feel useful in a world that had slowly started treating me like background noise. I dragged my little suitcase down the hallway of my apartment building, the wheels catching on the cracked tile like they always did. Same hallway I'd walked down for over 20 years. Same flickering light near the elevator. Same smell of cleaning solution and old carpet. Home. I stopped at my door, dropped my bag, and reached into my purse for my keys. They were right where they always were, clipped to the same old keychain my son made in elementary school. A lopsided piece of plastic with my name misspelled and sealed forever under yellowed resin. I slid the key into the lock. It didn't turn. I pulled it out and looked at it, annoyed, like the key was being dramatic. "Come on," I muttered, pushing it back in and twisting harder. Nothing. The metal scraped, stopped short, and refused. I tried again, slower, more careful, like maybe rushing had offended it. Still nothing. A little laugh slipped out of me, the kind you do when something minor goes wrong and you don't want to overreact. "You're tired, Eleanor," I told myself. "That's all. Old hands, old lock." I leaned closer, squinting at the door like it might explain itself. Same beige paint, same dent near the handle from when Lucas slammed it shut during a teenage tantrum. Same cheap peephole I never trusted. This was my door, but it didn't open. My chest tightened, just a bit. Not panic yet, just unease. The kind that crawls in quietly and sits heavy. I tried the key one more time. That's when it hit me, not as a thought, but as a feeling. Cold, sharp, familiar in a way that made my stomach drop. What if they actually did it? I shook my head. "No," I whispered. "They wouldn't. Lucas wouldn't." I pulled my phone out, fingers suddenly clumsy, and scrolled until his name filled the screen. My son. My only child. The boy I carried for 9 months, raised on thrift store clothes and bedtime stories. Defended in every argument, even when I knew he was wrong. I pressed call. It rang. Once, twice, 3 times. He picked up. "Mom?" he said. There was something in his voice I didn't like. Tight, guarded, like he'd already braced himself. "Hey, sweetheart," I said, forcing cheer into my tone. "I just got back. I'm outside the apartment, but the key isn't working. Did something happen with the lock?" Silence. Not a bad connection. My fingers went numb so fast I almost dropped the phone. "You... what?" I whispered. "The apartment is ours now," she continued. casual as if she were talking about switching cable providers. "You were gone a lot anyway. We figured it made sense." I waited. I waited for my son to interrupt her, to explain, to defend me, to say my name. He didn't. He stayed silent. That silence hurt more than her words ever could. I felt something inside me crack. Not loudly, not all at once, but deep and slow, like an old bone giving up. I counted to 5 in my head. I don't know why. Maybe to keep myself from begging. Maybe to keep myself from screaming. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. "I see," I said, calmly enough that it surprised even me. And then I hung up. I stood there with the phone still in my hand, staring at my reflection in the glossy paint of the neighbor's door. An old woman with gray hair pulled back too tight, lines around her mouth carved by years of biting words back. People passed me in the hallway, a young couple arguing softly, a delivery guy checking apartment numbers. Life continuing, like nothing had just ended. I slowly set my bags down on the floor and sat on the stairs. That's when the weight of it really hit. They didn't just lock me out of an apartment. They locked me out of my life. Every birthday cake I baked in that kitchen. Every night I waited up for my son when he was late. Every dollar I saved instead of spending on myself so he could have more. All of it reduced to silence and a new lock. I didn't knock. I didn't call back. I didn't cry. Not yet. I picked up my suitcase, straightened my coat, and walked out of the building I once thought I'd leave in a casket. As I stepped onto the sidewalk, one thought settled in my chest, heavy and certain. If they thought this was the end of me, they had no idea who they'd just pushed aside. I didn't know where I was going when I stepped out onto that sidewalk. All I knew was I couldn't stand there looking like a fool with my life packed into one tired suitcase. Pride's a funny thing when you're old. You don't have much left, so you guard what remains like it's gold. The air smelled like car exhaust and somebody's cheap cologne. Traffic hummed past like the city didn't care that my whole world had just been yanked out from under me. I stood there for a second, blinking, trying to slow my breathing before it turned ugly. "Think, Eleanor," I muttered. "You didn't raise a fool. Don't become one now." First thought was a hotel. Second thought was the price. I did the math in my head fast and didn't like the answer. My savings weren't built for comfort. They were built for survival. There's a difference, and you learn it real quick when you're old and alone. So I did what I'd been doing more and more lately. I walked. I dragged that suitcase down the street, wheels rattling like they were mad at me, until I hit the bus stop. Sat down, looked at my hands. They were shaking now. Not dramatic shaking, just enough to notice. That's when the anger showed up. Not the loud kind, the quiet, controlled kind that doesn't burn out fast. The kind that sits with you and takes notes. I thought about Lucas as a baby, screaming his lungs out at 3 a.m, about pacing the floor with him while my feet ached and my eyes burned, about skipping meals so he could have seconds, about defending him to teachers, girlfriends, bosses, sometimes when he deserved it, sometimes when he didn't. And now he couldn't even say my name on the phone. I swallowed hard and stared across the street, forcing myself not to spiral. Spirals don't help. Action does. I pulled out my phone again and scrolled until I found Margaret's number. Margaret, from the community center. 68, divorced twice, sharp tongue, soft heart. We did yoga together on Thursdays and complained about the price of groceries like it was a sport. She picked up on the second ring. Eleanor? You okay? You never call this early. Margaret, I said, and that was all it took. She heard it instantly. Where are you? Outside my building, I answered. Well, outside what used to be my building. There was a pause. Do you want me to ask questions, or do you want me to come get you first? God bless women like that. Get me, I said. She was there in 15 minutes, pulling up in her beat-up sedan like a damn rescue mission. She took one look at my suitcase, my face, and didn't say a word. Just popped the trunk. I didn't cry until the car door shut. Then it all came out. Not sobbing, just tears sliding down while I stared out the window like I was watching somebody else's life go by. Margaret drove with one hand and passed me tissues with the other. Take all the time you need, she said. You don't owe anyone strength. Her apartment wasn't big, but it was warm, smelled like coffee and lavender cleaner. She set me up on the couch, handed me a mug, and finally asked, what happened? So I told her. Every ugly detail. The lock, the laugh, the silence. When I finished, she sat back and crossed her arms. That woman, she said slowly, has no soul. And my son? I asked. ... She didn't hesitate. Your son failed you. That hurt worse than anything else she could have said. But it was honest. I stayed with Margaret that night, and the next. I slept badly, waking up every few hours like I'd forgotten something important. Each time I remembered, the weight settled back onto my chest. By the third day, I knew I couldn't stay forever. Not because Margaret didn't want me, she did, but because I needed to stand on my own feet again. I'd already lost my home. I wasn't about to lose myself too. That's when I found the room. Small, cheap, clean enough. The landlord didn't look at me like I was fragile or useless, just old and paying on time. I signed the papers with a steady hand and moved in with 2 suitcases and a spine that felt straighter than it had in months. I took a job the same week. Nights, caregiving, Mrs. Connie. She didn't remember my name half the time, but she smiled when I held her hand. Sometimes she said things that made no sense. Sometimes she said things that felt like they came straight from somewhere wiser than both of us. One night, as I tucked her back into bed after she'd woken up confused, she looked at me and asked, "Did someone leave you?" I froze. "Yes," I said quietly. She nodded, like that confirmed something. People leave. Love doesn't always go with them. I sat with that long after she fell asleep. Weeks passed. I worked, I saved, I went to yoga. I planted tomatoes in the community garden. I laughed more than I expected to. I cried less than I thought I would. Lucas didn't call. Neither did his wife. I told myself I didn't care, that I was done waiting for explanations. But the truth is, every mother waits, even when she swears she won't. One afternoon, nearly 8 months after the lock incident, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. "Hello?" I said. "Mom," Lucas's voice came through, rough and thin. "We need to talk, please." I closed my eyes. The past version of me would have rushed. would have said yes instantly, would have dropped everything. This version of me took a breath. Where? I asked. Robert's office, he said. It's important. I hung up and stared at the wall for a long time. Whatever waited on the other side of that meeting. I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't the same woman they'd locked out. I showed up early. Not because I was eager, because I refused to be rushed ever again. Robert's office was on the 5th floor of one of those glass buildings that tries real hard to look important. I sat in the waiting room with my purse on my lap, spine straight, legs crossed like I belonged there. Because I did. I wasn't some confused old woman wandering into the wrong place. I was a mother who'd survived being erased. Lucas was already there. I almost didn't recognize him. He looked smaller somehow. Not shorter, just worn down. Like life had been chewing on him non-stop and finally got bored. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair unwashed, and the dark circles under his eyes looked like bruises left by time itself. This wasn't the boy I raised. This was a man who'd been crushed. He stood when he saw me. "Mom, don't," I said, sharper than I meant to. But I didn't apologize. I'd swallowed enough words for one lifetime. Robert stepped out and waved us in, like a referee calling two fighters into the ring. We sat across from each other. Lucas kept twisting his hands together, fingers working, like they were trying to escape his own skin. "Speak," I said. "I'm not here for silence." He took a shaky breath. What happened? What we did? It wasn't what it looked like. I leaned back. Really? Because from where I was standing, it looked a lot like my son kicked me out of my own home and let his wife laugh about it. His face crumpled. "I know," he whispered. "I know how it looked." "Then explain," I said, slowly, "and don't insult me with half-truths." His shoulders sagged, like I'd finally given him permission to collapse. 2 years ago, he started, voice breaking, Jessica's brother got into serious trouble. Not stupid trouble, dangerous trouble. My stomach tightened. He owed money, a lot of it, $50,000, to people you don't negotiate with. The room felt colder. They couldn't find him, Lucas continued. So they came for Jessica. Then they came for Leo. My breath caught. My grandson? They had photos, he said, tears spilling now. School schedules, addresses. They told us if we didn't pay, they'd make us watch. I couldn't speak. My heart was pounding too loud. "We didn't have the money," he said, "but we had your apartment." I stared at him. "Your apartment was worth enough to settle everything," he said, "but if they knew you owned it, you'd become a target." My hands went cold. "So you sold my home," I said slowly, "and decided the best way to protect me was to destroy me." "Yes," he said, voice cracking, "because if you acted hurt, if you looked abandoned, they'd believe we had nothing left to take." I laughed then, a sharp, broken sound. So my pain was part of the performance? His tears hit the carpet. Every day, every single day. Robert cleared his throat. "I verified everything," he said gently. "The arrests, the payments, the threats, it's real." Lucas pulled an envelope from his jacket and slid it across the desk. "Your money," he said. "What was left after everything? 220,000 in your name." I stared at it. 8 months. 8 months of rage, shame, rebuilding myself from nothing. and the truth had been hiding in paperwork. They're all in prison now, Lucas said. That's why I can finally tell you. My chest felt like it was splitting open. And the laughter? I asked quietly. That day on the phone, Lucas closed his eyes. They were listening. We had to act like we enjoyed it. I stood up, not to scream, not to cry. I just needed air. I lost something too, I said, voice shaking but steady. I lost my trust, my sense of safety, the mother I was before you decided I couldn't handle the truth. I know, he whispered, and I'll carry that forever. I looked at my son, really looked at him. This broken man who had chosen to be hated so I could stay alive. I don't hate you, I said finally, but I don't forgive you yet either. He nodded. I don't deserve it. I walked out of that office without the envelope. I walked for hours, through streets I didn't know, past stores I didn't see. I sat on a park bench and stared at my phone. Messages from my new life, from Margaret, from Arthur at the garden, from work asking if I could cover a shift. The life I built while believing I was unloved. When I finally stood up, my legs felt steadier than my heart. I wasn't going back to who I was. Whatever came next, it would be on my terms. That night, I didn't go home right away. I wandered, like someone who'd been dropped into a different version of her own life and hadn't been given a map. The city moved around me, cars honking, couples arguing, kids laughing. But I felt like I was wrapped in glass. Everything visible, nothing reachable. 8 months. That's how long I'd lived believing my own son had chosen cruelty over love. And now I was supposed to just rearrange my soul and accept a new truth? I sat on a cold metal bench in the park. The same one where I'd done sunrise yoga so many mornings. The bench where I'd once cried quietly into my scarf, convinced my life was over. Funny thing about truth, it doesn't erase pain. It just gives it a different shape. My phone buzzed. Margaret. I stared at her name for a long second before answering. I can't lie, I said the moment she spoke. If you say, "Are you okay?" I might throw this phone into traffic. She exhaled. That bad? Worse. And somehow, not. I told her everything. Every word, Lucas said. The threats, the money, the lie built to keep me breathing. When I finished, there was silence on the line. Then Margaret whispered, "Jesus." Yeah, I said. That pretty much sums it up. How do you feel? I laughed, but it came out cracked. Like someone set my house on fire and then handed me the insurance check 8 months later. That's disturbingly accurate. I rebuilt myself thinking I was unwanted, I said. Turns out I was protected. Those two things can exist at the same time, she said gently. Love can still hurt like hell. I hung up after that, my chest tight, but my spine straighter. That night, I went to work. Mrs. Connie was already asleep when I arrived, curled up like a child, clutching her blanket. I sat in the chair beside her bed and watched her breathe. There's something grounding about caring for someone who doesn't pretend life is simple. Around 3 a.m., she woke up confused, eyes wide. "Where's my husband?" she asked. I smoothed her hair. "Sleeping," I said softly. "You're safe." She studied my face like she could see straight through me. "You look tired, honey. Like someone broke your heart but didn't finish the job." I swallowed. "Something like that." She nodded. Love does that. Leaves you standing when you thought you'd fall. She went back to sleep. I didn't. The next few days passed like I was underwater. Lucas texted once. Just once. I'm here when you're ready. I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, but because if I opened that door too fast, everything I'd built might come crashing down. I went to yoga. I went to work. I watered the garden with Arthur. He noticed something was off immediately. You're quieter, he said, kneeling beside the tomato plants. That usually means something big happened. I told him. All of it. He listened the way he always did. No interruptions, no advice too soon. When I finished, he wiped dirt off his hands and said, You know what hurts the most about sacrifices like that? What? They steal your choice, even when they're made out of love. That hit harder than anything Lucas had said. I don't know how to forgive without becoming small again, I admitted. You don't, Arthur said. You forgive without shrinking. That's the difference. A week later, I called Lucas. Not to apologize, not to cry. I want to see Leo, I said. Just him. In the park. He didn't argue. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Seeing my grandson after 8 months felt like my heart rebooted itself. He ran at me full speed, arms out, yelling, Grandma! Like I'd never left. I dropped to my knees and held him so tight I forgot how to breathe. He smelled like shampoo and cookies and everything good left in the world. Why were you gone so long? He asked, innocent as sunrise. I kissed his hair. Sometimes grown-ups make things messy, but I'm here now. Lucas watched from a distance, giving us space. When he finally approached, I held up a hand. This isn't reconciliation, I said. This is a beginning. He nodded. I'll take it. Weeks passed. I made decisions. Slow ones. Careful ones. I bought a smaller condo. Not the life I lost, but the one I chose. I kept working, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. And one evening, sitting on my new balcony, watching the sun bleed orange into the skyline, I realized something important. I hadn't been destroyed. I'd been tested, and I survived. When Arthur came over later with a bottle of cheap wine and that gentle smile, I felt something close to peace. Not comfort, not certainty, but strength. And at 70 years old, that felt like winning. Life didn't snap back into place after that park meeting. It didn't heal itself just because the truth finally showed its face. If anything, everything felt heavier. Like now I understood the weight of what we'd all been carrying, and there was no unknowing it. I moved into the new condo on a quiet Tuesday. No fanfare, no family parade, just me, 2 borrowed boxes from Margaret, and a hired kid who kept calling me ma'am like I was made of glass. The place was smaller than my old apartment, sure, but it was bright. Big windows, a balcony that looked out over the park. Not the same park, but close enough that the trees still whispered when the wind hit right. I stood there alone that first night, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, and realized something strange. For the first time in my life, every single thing in that space belonged to me. No son's paperwork stacked on the table. No daughter-in-law's passive-aggressive decor choices. No feeling like I was living on borrowed permission. Just mine. I slept on a mattress on the floor that night and woke up sore but clear-headed. That kind of sore you get when your body knows you're alive. I kept working. Not because I needed the money anymore, but because the work grounded me. Mrs. Connie still called me honey, still asked for her husband at 2 in the morning, still squeezed my hand like I was an anchor in a world that kept slipping away from her. One night, while I was helping her back to bed, she looked at me, real serious, and said, "You changed." I smiled. "That obvious?" "You don't bend as much anymore," she said. "You stand." That stuck with me. Lucas kept his distance like I asked. No pressure. No emotional ambushes. Just short texts about Leo. Pictures of him missing teeth. Drawings he'd made for me. I loved my grandson fiercely, but I wasn't ready to step back into the role of available at all costs grandma. I was learning boundaries at 70, and damn if that lesson didn't come late. One afternoon, Lucas finally came over, alone. He stood in my doorway like a guest instead of a son, holding a bag of groceries like an offering. "I didn't know what you'd want," he said. I stepped aside. "You can come in. I didn't say I was done with you. I said I was rebuilding." We sat at my small kitchen table. No yelling, no crying. Just two tired people who loved each other and didn't know how to undo the damage cleanly. "I wake up every night thinking you'll disappear again," he admitted. "That you'll decide the pain was too much." I looked him dead in the eye. I already survived the pain. What I'm deciding now is the shape of my future. He nodded slowly. "What does that future look like?" I leaned back. "One where I'm included. Not protected from, but trusted with. One where you don't decide my life without my voice." "I swear," he said quietly, "never again." I believed him, not because words fix things, but because I'd learned how to watch actions. Weeks turned into months. My routine became mine again. Yoga twice a week. Thursday coffee with the girls. Gardening with Arthur. Quiet evenings on the balcony, where I read old books and let the city hum below me like background music. Arthur and I, we didn't rush. We grew slow, like the tomatoes, like trust. One evening, while we were watering the garden, he said, "You know, most people our age are afraid of change." I laughed. Most people our age haven't had their whole life ripped out from under them. He smiled. "True, but not everyone rebuilds it better." That night, when I got home, I found an envelope slipped under my door. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a familiar bank logo. Another account, in my name, with a balance that made my hands start to shake. And stapled to it, a note, written in handwriting I hadn't seen in years. "Mom, this isn't an apology. This is me making sure you never feel powerless again. I didn't tell you about this one. I wanted it to be a surprise. Please don't hate me for that." I sat down hard in the chair, because in that moment, I realized something terrifying. My son was still making decisions for me, and I had no idea whether this was love or the start of the same cycle all over again. I didn't touch that envelope for 2 whole days. Just let it sit there on my kitchen counter like it might explode if I looked at it wrong. Every time I walked past, my stomach tightened. Not because of the money. I'd already lived without it, learned how to breathe without it. What scared me was what it meant. Control wrapped up as care. Protection dressed like love. I'd spent 8 months tearing myself out of that mindset. I wasn't about to slide back just because the numbers were big again. On the third morning, I made myself coffee, sat down, and really looked at the paperwork. It was real, clean, legal, no tricks. Lucas hadn't stolen a cent, but he'd still decided, again, that he knew what was best for me. That was the part that burned. I called him. He answered on the first ring. "Mom, I got your envelope." Silence on the other end, the kind that tells you someone's bracing for impact. "I figure you would," he finally said. "I didn't want to overwhelm you earlier. You'd already been through enough." I closed my eyes and breathed slow. "Lucas, I need you to listen to me without interrupting." "Okay. I don't need surprises anymore. Not good ones, not bad ones. I need transparency. I need respect." I know what you were trying to do. I cut in, firm but calm. "And I'm not ungrateful. But every time you make a decision about my life without my consent, you take something from me. You don't mean to, but you do." Another long pause. "I didn't think of it like that," he said quietly. "That's the problem," I replied. "You didn't think of me. You thought of the version of me you're afraid to lose, the fragile one, the one who needs saving." "I almost lost you," he whispered. "No," I said. "You didn't. I found myself." That landed. I could hear it in his breathing. "What do you want me to do?" he asked. I didn't hesitate. "Nothing, for once. Let me decide." When we hung up, my hands were shaking, but not from fear. From relief. I'd finally said it out loud. That night, I took a long walk through the park. The same park where everything had quietly started over for me. The trees were bare now, winter creeping in. But there was still life underneath. Always is. Arthur was waiting by the garden plot, bundled up in that ridiculous scarf he loved. "You look like you've been wrestling ghosts," he said. I told him everything. He listened like he always did. No fixing, no judging, just presence. "You know," he said finally, "love doesn't excuse control, and fear doesn't excuse silence. You're allowed to want both connection and autonomy." I smiled at him. "You ever think about becoming a therapist?" He laughed. "I'm retired. Wisdom comes cheaper now." Weeks passed. I decided to put that second account somewhere safe, untouched. Not because I didn't trust myself, but because I wanted to prove something to me. That I wasn't driven by panic anymore. That money wasn't my oxygen. Life kept unfolding. I cut my work hours like I planned. Started saying no without guilt. Bought myself real furniture instead of temporary things. A couch I loved. Curtains I chose because I liked the color. One afternoon, Leo came over for the first time. He ran through my condo like it was Disneyland. "Grandma, you got a balcony! Can I wave at cars?" I laughed so hard my chest hurt. Lucas hovered in the doorway, nervous, unsure. "Relax," I told him. "You raised him. He's good." We ate grilled cheese at my table. Leo spilled juice again. And again, I didn't care. After they left, Lucas lingered. "You seem different." "I am," I said. "I don't disappear into other people anymore." He nodded. "I think that scares me a little." "It should," I replied gently. "Means I'm not going anywhere." That night, Arthur came over with wine like he promised weeks ago. We sat on the balcony, wrapped in blankets, city lights blinking, like quiet applause. You ever regret how things turned out? He asked. I thought about it. About the betrayal, the loneliness, the rebuilding. No, I said finally. I regret the pain, but not the becoming. He reached for my hand. Not possessive, not urgent, just there. Months ago, I would have pulled away, afraid of needing anyone. This time, I didn't. Because I'd learned something powerful at 70 years old. Love is a choice. Independence is a right. And peace comes when you stop confusing the two. And just when I thought life had finally settled into something steady, the phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Mrs. Eleanor, a man's voice said. This is regarding the apartment that was sold 8 months ago. There's been a legal issue. We need to speak with you immediately. My heart dropped, because apparently the past wasn't done collecting its dues yet. That phone call sat in my bones all night. I didn't sleep, not really. I laid there, staring at the ceiling of my new bedroom, the one I bought with my own choices, my own backbone, and felt that old, familiar tension creep back in. That feeling like the floor might suddenly drop out from under me. Legal issue. Those 2 words can wreck a person. By morning, I'd already decided one thing. I wasn't spiraling. Not anymore. I'd survived worse than paperwork and suits with polished voices. I put on my good coat, the one that made me feel sharp, not old, and took the bus downtown. No calling Lucas. Not yet. This was mine to face first. The office was cold and too quiet, all glass walls and fake smiles. The man who'd called me introduced himself as Mr. Hargreave, lawyer type. Neat hair, no warmth. The sale of your former apartment has been flagged, he said, folding his hands. There's a dispute regarding consent. I felt my jaw tighten. Explain. Your son was listed as acting on your behalf. Power of attorney documentation was submitted. That word hit me like a slap. I never signed the power of attorney, I said slowly. He raised his brows. That's concerning. You're damn right it is. Turns out, Lucas had signed paperwork under emergency provisions while I was hospitalized for exhaustion months before everything fell apart. Temporary authority. Legal, but gray. Real gray. I didn't know, I whispered, and this time it wasn't weakness. It was fury under control. Mr. Hargreaves leaned back. If you wish to contest it, the sale could be reversed. Funds frozen. Property reevaluated. Reverse it. My old apartment. The one that broke me. The one I rebuilt myself without. I shook my head. No, he blinked. Excuse me? I don't want it back, I said. I want clarity, and I want boundaries. I asked for copies of everything, every signature, every date, every line. When I stepped back outside, the city felt louder, sharper. But I was steady. I called Lucas from a park bench. Mom? They used a power of attorney, I said flat. Emergency filing. You didn't tell me. Silence. Long, heavy. I didn't think it would matter, he finally said. I thought it was just paperwork. That paperwork took my agency, I snapped. Do you understand that? I was trying to save everyone, and in the process, you erased me, I said. Again. He didn't argue, didn't defend himself. That told me everything. I'm not reversing the sale, I continued. But listen to me carefully, Lucas. This is the last time anyone makes a legal decision for me. If it happens again, I walk. No calls, no dinners, no second chances. His voice cracked. I hear you. I need more than hearing, I said. I need change. I swear, he said. On everything. After we hung up, my hands shook. Not from fear, from the weight of finally standing my ground with my own child. That evening, I told Arthur. He didn't sugarcoat it. Intent doesn't cancel impact. No, I agreed. But love complicates consequences. You don't owe anyone access just because they're blood, he said gently. I smiled. Funny. Took me 70 years to learn that. Weeks passed again. Life found its rhythm. Yoga, work, garden, quiet dinners with Arthur that felt less like company and more like home. Then, one afternoon, Margaret burst into my condo without knocking. You need to sit down, she said. That bad, I joked. Worse, she replied. I ran into Jessica's brother. My chest went cold. The one with the debt? She nodded. He's out. Charges reduced. Cooperated with police. I stood up so fast my chair scraped. Did he say anything about us? He asked about you, Margaret said. Asked where you lived. That was it. The line in the sand. That night, I didn't sleep again. But this time, I wasn't helpless. I called Lucas at dawn. He's sniffing around, I said. This ends now. Within hours, Lucas had contacted authorities. Restraining orders filed. Security cameras installed at my building. Extra patrol requests. For the first time, protection didn't feel like control. It felt like partnership. A week later, Leo came over again. We baked cookies, burned half of them, laughed like fools. Grandma, he said, licking chocolate off his fingers, you're brave. I froze. What makes you say that, sweetheart? Daddy says you don't let people push you anymore. I smiled through tears. He's right. That night, Arthur and I stood on my balcony, watching the city breathe. You ever scared it'll all fall apart again? He asked. Every day, I said honestly. But I trust myself now. That's new. He took my hand. That's everything. I thought the worst had passed. I was wrong. Because 2 days later, a certified letter arrived. Not from a lawyer. Not from Lucas. From a bank I'd never heard of. And inside was a single line that made my blood run cold. Account activity detected. Beneficiary status under review. Someone was trying to touch what was mine. And this time, I wasn't going to be quiet about it. That letter sat on my kitchen table like it had teeth. I didn't open it right away. I made coffee first. Toast, too. I've learned something about fear. It feeds when you rush. So I slowed everything down on purpose, like I was daring it to show its face. Beneficiary status under review. Those words replayed in my head like a bad song you can't turn off. I called the number on the letter. Put it on speaker. Sat straight. No shaking this time. After 15 minutes of elevator music and fake apologies, a woman finally picked up. Calm voice, corporate polite, the kind that thinks it owns the room. There's been an inquiry filed regarding your accounts, she said. By who? I asked. I'm afraid I can't disclose. You can, I cut in, and you will, or I hang up and my attorney calls you instead. Pause. Then she cleared her throat. Your son and daughter-in-law submitted a request to be added as secondary beneficiaries. There it was. No surprise, just confirmation. I laughed. Out loud. A sharp, tired laugh that scared even me. They already took my home, I said. Now they want my future? They claimed concern for your well-being, she replied. Funny, I said. Did they mention changing my locks? Another pause. Longer this time. I'll note your objection, she said carefully. You'll do more than note it, I replied. You'll flag the account, freeze any changes, and document attempted interference. Because if this happens again, I'm pressing charges. When I hung up, my hands were steady. That's when I knew I wasn't the scared woman on the stairs anymore. I called Lucas. I know what you did, I said calmly. Silence. Mom! No, I interrupted. You don't get to explain this away. You didn't ask. You didn't warn me. You tried to sneak your way into my money like I wouldn't notice. Jessica grabbed the phone. I could hear it. We were just trying to help. You changed my locks, I snapped. You laughed while I stood outside my own home. Don't ever say help to me again. She started crying. Loud, dramatic, same old act. I raised you better than this, I said to Lucas. But here we are. I was scared, he admitted. About money, about the future. So was I replied. Difference is, I didn't steal. That night, I made the hardest decision of my life. I changed my will. Not out of anger, out of clarity. Lucas stayed in it, but with boundaries. Trusts, conditions, accountability. Jessica, not a dime. Not now, not ever. I set up a living trust, medical directives, legal walls so thick nobody could climb them again. It felt brutal. It felt necessary. Weeks passed. No calls, no surprise visits, just peace. Then one Sunday afternoon, there was a knock at my door. Lucas, alone. He looked smaller, tired, like the weight had finally landed. I'm sorry, he said. No excuses this time. I believed him, but belief doesn't erase damage. I love you, I said, but love doesn't mean access. He nodded, tears in his eyes. I understand. When he left, I didn't feel empty. I felt free. Now listen to me. Really listen. If you're watching this and you feel small in your own family, if you're being guilted, controlled, erased, if someone is treating your kindness like weakness, you are allowed to protect yourself. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to choose peace over blood. I lost a house, but I found my spine. And trust me, that trade was worth everything. If this story hit home, don't stay silent. Subscribe. Share it with someone who needs strength. And remember, you're never too old to take your life back.